Hey y'all, this is part 2 of the Prickly Pillow project. This is the first of the scrap busting series. The first half of the project was me putting together the actual pillow, and this is how I constructed the cover, the outside of the pillow. So I started with these pajama pants, and I had to try to make them fit the I had to try to make them fit the pattern. It's not even, but with the upcycle, you got to try to make it work, right? So I could try to lay this out and see if I can get the whole piece. And I can almost fit a whole piece. It's a little short right here, but because I have this extra fabric down here, at least I have some, and right here on the side, I have some I can add. So I'm going to fold this in half. So like with most upcycles, if you're starting with an item that's already been constructed, you have a very limited amount of fabric to work with. And that's the case here. These pants were already cut and they didn't quite fit the pattern. So I had to take offcuts from the section that I wouldn't be using and add to the missing bits. Fortunately, there were only very small areas that I needed to add fabric to. Here's a pro tip. When you're cutting fabric, be sure to have sharp blades. To add the seam allowance. So I just realized that I made a note on that pattern to add the seam allowance. And I didn't add the seam allowance. Also, I didn't have enough on the sides to add the seam allowance. So I'm going to have to use another fabric for the seam allowance. Or I could cut the extra into strips if it's enough for the seam allowance. So let's see how this, we have a little, we need to add right here anyway. So it's almost a square. I'm short a little extra right here. But I can add that on using this right here. I could just sew it on and add it on. And then I'm going to have to add the extra seam allowance around all 4 corners. And I'm going to have to do that 2 times. 2 times. I'm going to add this little tiny bit. So if you're really upcycling existing clothes, this is always a problem because you don't always have a lot of yardage. You know, you always have to be prepared to be just a little extra creative, more creative than the average bear, because you're gonna run into something. And this is common. So you can't, and this is why really, you can't really be a perfectionist trying to upcycle, because very rare is something perfect. Oh, look at that. Cuts much easier. I don't know, even when I got a good blade, you know, oh, cutting through a pen isn't going to help. Okay, then, yeah. Like that. I saw someone say this is really how you should do it. Cut on paper. It could be a brand new blade. I don't know. I like that it supposedly make an easy cut, but I always got to use a scissors to cut something else. So I got these little scraps. And I feel like I got, let's see. That's better than the first leg. It's only a little tiny, tiny piece right here that I didn't get. I'm just going to throw that whole piece right there and cut it again. Because the rest of it is covered. Could that be because I ironed it? It could possibly be the result of ironing. So, remember, you must iron. Okay, so now I ironed it on. I mean, I not ironed it. Oh, you guys, it's early in the morning for me. Okay, so now I sewed this little tiny patch on. I'm going to flip it so we can see how much got here. I'm going to cut the excess. I'm going to trim the excess off. Piece by piece. Okay. I don't know what I can do. These things don't want to cut off for me. And I'm going to cut this side. That part off. Little tiny scraps. What I got left. Bam! So I have one whole square. And I ironed this one. Ooh! Almost had a heart attack. That's a leftover piece. Ooh. Freaked myself out. Yeah, look at that. I have two whole base pieces. This has a little extra I need to trim off right here to make it a square. It was a little piece I added. So take that little scrap off. All right. So I got two pieces, two whole pieces to make my pillow. Now, what I also think I need to do is cut, because this is so thin, I'm going to cut something a little thicker, the same size, so that this will be less flimsy before I even get started. So I'm going to just cut two more of these. I got to find a fabric. When I find a fabric, I'll show you. It's not going to matter what it is. It's going to be underneath it. Okay, y'all, guess what? I forgot to think of something. So I laid the pillow on top just to see about how much of a seam allowance I thought I really might need to add. Sorry for the phone shaking. Because really, I don't think that I remember to add a seam allowance for the base of the pillow anyway. So I was thinking, oh, it's going to match. But you know what I did not think of? See? Let me do this so you can see the whole thing. What I didn't think of is that this will be, like, say this is the top and this is the bottom. We're going to sew them around the sides. It's not very complicated. It is just a square. But what I did not think of is the closure, like the cover. So am I going to do a zipper or am I going to do a flap? I think I'll just do a zipper. I think I have a zipper. I have so many zippers. Let me see if I have a zipper. Ooh, I found a blue zipper. It's not the same color blue, but I think it's good enough. And it's long. All right. So I'll have a zipper to close it up. Then I have these pieces. So I need to have a lining for this. And then I also definitely need to add a seam allowance. What for my seam allowance, I think I'm going to do 1.5 inches. And I think that will give it enough room for, like, I don't want this to be super tight on the pillow because you have to have it easy enough to put the pillow inside, because this is just the pillowcase we're working on. And you don't want to struggle to put the pillow in. I think I'm going to start with 1.5 inches, which will allow me to have some fabric to trim off if it's a little too big. And yeah. So, how much of this I have? Even on the shortest part of this extra leg fabric, I have pretty much enough. So I think I'm going to take the remainder of the extra fabric and cut 8 strips that are 1.5 inches, 8. Yeah, 8. I'll do 9 because I think I'm gonna have to add. I'll do 10 just in case. The goal is to have 10 1.5 inch strips to add to the 8 corners of these sides so that I can have enough seam allowance. So that's what I'm gonna do. And then after that, I'll use these pieces as the pattern for the lining. That's why then everything will definitely be the right size and the same size. So, what did I just say? 1.5? 1.5 strips. Okay. That's what I'm going to work on. So after all of the strips were cut to be added to the seam allowance, I made sure that I actually checked them against the edges of the pillow, because obviously they probably are not exactly the amount, the length that they need to be. So what I realized is I would need to connect all of these strips to one piece so that when I added it to the sides, they would match directly, if that makes sense, because they all came up a little short. So I needed to connect them and then add them to the sides of each square so that they would match the actual measurement of each side. Okay, so here's the most fun part of the project. This is the part where I get to create the design for the pillow cover. It will be a larger version of the cactus to play off of the background fabric. So I wanted to utilize the little scraps that I had. I looked at the colors and the shapes that I had. So, I had a limited amount to work with because they're all scraps. And I came up with a design that I could draw out on paper to create a pattern for my cactus. The process I used to draft the pattern for the cactus design was to start off by seeing how much fabric I had. And so I kind of blocked it out on the pattern so that I would ensure that I had enough fabric for whatever piece that I was cutting. And so I started out tracing all of the actual size pieces that I had and then working within those constraints to create the design for the cactus. I initially wanted the flower pot to be very big because I wanted to put a message on the pot, but I later decided not to do that. After I had all of the paper pieces cut out, I laid them out on the table so I could get a better view of what my design would look like. Then I'll have this piece, which will be the cactus piece, and it will go under here. Right. Then I'll play with this arm, and I think I want this one down here, right? And it will go under this one. Oh. And then this piece, I'm gonna raise up a little higher. Once I get started, like these are my base pieces, and then usually when I do a project like this, I add onto it. It's almost like painting, right? But this is just the base layer. And I like both of these fabrics. I had these little scraps here from this Cantha blanket, and I thought this would be kind of cute. Let me see. This is how this would be. And then maybe this, when I cut it, could be like some kind of adornment on the pot, like maybe a band at the top of the pot. Or, yeah, I can't put anything here because this is what the message going to be. I forgot my daggone self. So I'll put something maybe up at the top of here. And then the cactus is going to be this color. And so that's how the applique is going to look. And then for the flowers, I kind of like this scrap. I'm going to take these strings out. Because it already has flowers on it. But I think I want to maybe make bigger flowers instead of cutting the cute little flowers out. But I will see once I get started. Also, the backside of it is really pretty and really could also be used for flowers as well. So maybe I'll do like one pink flower, one yellow flower. Not really sure yet. But I'm going to, yeah. So now I think I'll cut these pieces out. So when I decided to cut out the piece for the pot, I didn't really have to do anything but cut the length of it. I wanted to keep the edges of the jeans. They were yellow jeans and they had the French seams on the side. So I wanted to maintain the seams on the side. As for the actual cactus pieces, I thought that the pinking shears would not only keep the fabric intact, but I thought that it would add a nice detail because of the effect you get from the pinking shears. I thought it would add to the effect of the prickliness of the cactus. So after I have the main pieces of the design together, it's time for me to start adding the details. And this is the part I really enjoy because it's very similar to painting except with fabric. So of course I need to add dirt to my pot. So I had this brown fabric and I played around with that forever just to try to get it to look right. I also needed to construct my flowers because I wanted little flowers on the cactus. And then there was always something that wasn't quite right about the band. I wanted a band at the top of the pot, the flower pot, but I don't know. I just was stuck on this fabric that I thought was perfect, but it just didn't look right. And then while I was just playing around with the fabric, I flipped it over and voila, the fabric looked perfect. Like the design on the other side of the fabric was exactly what I was looking for the pot. So those are the little details that take a lot of time when I'm constructing these kinds of projects. After I had all the pieces in place, it was time to take it to the sewing machine. I made sure to change the thread for the pot. I used the yellow thread, and then when I did the cactus part, I changed it to a green thread. I also used a zigzag stitch for all of the cactus pieces as well as the flower pieces because I didn't want them to unravel. The flower pot was not a concern. It wasn't going to unravel. I used a straight stitch for that. So after I had all the pieces sewed on, I looked at it and I thought it was really good, but it was still missing something. And so I decided that the cactus parts needed to have more texture to them. So I figured, it's a cactus. It has to have more little prickly parts, hence the name of the pillow, the prickly pillow. So I found like the perfect decorative stitch that was already on my sewing machine, and I took the time to add all the little extra spikes onto the cactus. After I had the decorative section of the pillow done, I was able to go back to the construction, which was the final piece, adding the lining to the pillow. So I used the old sheet as the lining, and I folded it in half and used one of the pillow sections as the pattern piece. So I wanted to ensure that they were all exactly the same size, and I just simply cut it out. And then I sewed the front half lining to the front half of the pillow, and the back half of the lining to the back half of the pillow. And that allowed me to have only two pieces of the pillows to actually construct, because now they were all four pieces were sewed together. And that made it a lot easier to add the zipper. Once I added the zipper to the first half of the pillow, I was able to add it to the second half, and then I could just easily sew around the remaining three sections of the pieces to construct the actual pillow or the pillowcase. And there you have it. Here is the finished pillowcase with the lining. And here is the finished pillow. And this concludes the first project of the scrap busting series. The prickly pillow will be available for sale on my Etsy shop. I will offer the option to purchase the entire pillow or just the pillowcase. If you'd like more information on the other things that I create, please go to my website, yardgirlcreations.com. Thank you for watching.